All-Star Weekend is a wrap. The reviews are not great. We'll talk about that. Who won and lost All-Star Weekend? Plus, what are the big questions as we approach the stretch run of the final less than 30 games in the NBA season? And we've got news for you on Jacque Vaughn being let go by the Nets, and Mike Conley gets a new deal with the Wolves. All that and more on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being an everyday, or checking out all of our great shows here on the flagship for Locked On NBA, here across all 5 days, Monday through Friday. Appreciate you guys being with us. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. My name's Matt Moore. I'm a senior NBA writer for the Action Network and co-host of Locked On Nuggets, joined by David Ramil, co-host of Locked On Heat. And we are a little ragged as we are back from All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis, where there's a lot to get into. There's a lot to get into. We're going to do winners and losers. And also today, we're going to talk about the big questions for the rest of the NBA season. And we'll hit some of the news, including Jacque Vaughn being fired by the Brooklyn Nets and Mike Conley being extended by Tim Conley in Minnesota later on. Let's start with the winners and losers from All-Star Weekend, David. All the rage today is obviously about how much of a disaster the game was, how disappointing Saturday night was outside of Sabrina versus Curry and maybe the three-point contest. We can do winners and losers here. I want to start with a positive because I just think it's good. I think it's good to start with the positive. The winner for me, honestly, was it was Indianapolis, and that's going to sound weird. That's going to sound weird because there were so many complaints from like inside the NBA about not wanting to be there, and LeBron was only there for about 35 seconds. I get it. If you're looking to party, maybe Indianapolis is not the place for you. What I will say, though, is there's lots of spaces to host events. There were lots of great events all over the city, and the best thing about being at All-Star Weekend is that it's a celebration of basketball, and that it does a very good job with. If you go to All-Star Weekend and you just don't watch the events, you'll have a pretty good time. The crowd on Saturday night I thought was really amped. It was a really good crowd, one of the better ones, because usually it's just corporate sponsors that are just like golf clapping. This is actually a pretty loud crowd, especially for Sabrina versus Curry. That was great. Crossover, awesome event. They have all these great panels you can check out, art, fashion, all of this like culture about basketball that gets celebrated, and all that stuff is great. So that's a winner for the weekend.
I agree. I think Indiana in general was a winner. The idea that at least I felt, and it kind of permeated in almost every aspect, is how much basketball is an intertwined part of daily life in the state of Indiana, and that Indianapolis is the heart of it. The idea of family, the idea of basketball, all tying together, all the great narratives and kind of bigger issues that we love about the positive side about basketball were kind of found in this All-Star event. And it was something that everybody was talking about in almost every event. You could see it, kids, families going around everywhere. The state of Indiana loves its basketball. You saw courts everywhere. There was a court in the back of my hotel. Like there's courts all over the place, covered in snow, despite everything that we saw with the weather. Like basketball was such a big, powerful part of just the state and what defines it. And I think that really permeated the idea, again, of family and basketball tying together. I love what you said about Indianapolis. It was really, with the exception of the weather, which obviously they can't control, a fantastic venue because there were so many different places to have all these incredible events. And it's so walkable. And it was just a really, really good place. Like I was thinking about it, even coming from Miami can't host the All-Star, despite whatever, calendar conflicts there might be. They don't have all the different things together. Like to get from one court that could host one event to another would probably take 45 minutes to an hour by car. So that's not even to say that it's walkable, because Miami is one of the least walkable cities in the United States. So I just, Indianapolis, Indiana, and Self are big winners at All-Star Weekend for me.
Yeah. A quick winner, I'll also say, is Tyrese Haliburton, who I thought was really great as an all-star host this weekend.
Read my notes, because I had that hip too. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, we can agree on that one. Hallie, I thought was a really big winner. Represented the city well, represented the team well. He's going to be a face of this league. He just is. He's going to be a face of this league, and he's already really popular. You saw that with his push in the IST. To me, he's honestly been one of the narratives of the year. Is like the emergence of Tyrese Halliburton has been one of the narratives of the year, and it was really cool that he got to be one of the faces. I thought this weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he was like a niche NBA media player that a lot of us have appreciated and seeing what he could do. And then it's just to see him become a 2-time All-Star at age 23 and to see him be embraced the way he was and define the city, define the team. And Reggie Miller, I attended an event with Reggie, and he was talking about how the players in the Pacers locker room look up to Halliburton and that they're kind of driven by him. They all believe that they have these championship aspirations, and it's because of a superstar like Halliburton. So to see that star rising in real time and to see it kind of take place and then be amplified by the league and showcased the way it has, it's nothing but better for Halliburton, but also better for the league in general.
Okay, the loser this weekend, for me, and no surprise, it's actually not the NBA. For me, it's the players. It's the players as a whole. Not even the NBPA, because the NBPA tried to cut this off at the pass. The NBPA had conversations with the league about, we need to improve this, and they tried to instill that. And you saw Jaylen Brown participate in the dunk contest as a member of the NBPA. I genuinely believe that was part of his thought, is like, as a representative, I'm gonna participate and really try and win this thing. And regardless of whether or not he got favorable judging, he at least participated and put himself out there to try and contribute. And like, he was trying a little bit on defense in the All-Star game. Like, he was actually trying to put it in there. But what do we run into again? The players don't care. LeBron James shows up on Sunday, basically flies into town that afternoon, shows up for a small availability, makes some headlines, plays a couple minutes in the game and is out. Nobody tries. Nobody gives any effort. Luka Doncic in particular. Luka's going to be a face of this league, and the way that he treats the All-Star game, look, it's not disrespectful. I get, it's fine because he's doing what players have done for years. Like, I'm not going to put this on Luka Doncic just because he's an egregious example. It's on everybody. It's on all of these superstar players. Sam Amick of The Athletic reported on Monday morning that there was some burblings from the superstars about, well, they really want me to try. They're going to have to pay us more.
Right.
Not just pay it. They do pay them. They get paid for playing in the All-Star game. Have to pay them more. Look, I get it. There's a power imbalance, and the owners are making billions off of this weekend. Like, the leagues make so much money off of All-Star weekend, and that goes in the league and the owners' coffers. I get it. I get that. I understand the power imbalance and wanting to even that field. I do. There's got to be some level of recognition for how this looks to the fans, because how it looks to the fans is, I don't care about you. I don't care about what you want from the All-Star game. I'm not trying unless you get me out of bed for 10 million. That's just really hard for average fans to be able to connect with. It doesn't mean that the power dynamics that we shouldn't hold owners accountable, because we should. We should be able to hold the owners and the league and the teams and the players all equally accountable for providing the product that the fans pay for. But on some level, as the players are the active participants, Ted Leonsis is not running up and down the floor. Okay? On some level, this weekend needs to be a little bit less about being basked in the glory of how awesome you are, that everyone is celebrating you all the time, and just a little bit about, hey, let's put on a good show for fans of the game, and let's honor the game of basketball with something competitive, David.
I kind of agree and kind of don't, to be honest with you. I think that, to me, one of the biggest losers was NBA media, if not the biggest loser, between Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith just completely crapping on what could have been a really, really good Saturday and Sunday event, or at least entertaining. If not good, entertaining. To crap on that level of entertainment for fans that aren't as, I don't know, they don't have the same kind of perspective of the league. And they kind of rely on us, you, me, big, small, no matter how, impactful we might be. We're all part of this kind of issue here because we keep saying the same things over and over. It's not fun. It hasn't been fun for a long time, though. And so we don't need to kind of take the curtain off every time and go, see, it sucks. It really sucks. Because guess what? It's been sucking for its entirety. At no point in time was the All-Star game ever competitive.
That's not true. That's not true at all, David. We had the 80s and 90s. They were competitive in the 80s and 90s.
No, they weren't. No, they weren't. That's you being 30 years younger. And now 30 All-Star games later, you're going, what the hell did I see in this? Because that's what it is. It's not for you and me, Matt. It's not for NBA media members. It's for those kids who might not get to watch all these players together in the same place and go, God damn, this is fun. I love freaking basketball. And instead, we're all going, man, this game sucks. And guess what? That permeates, that resonates with these kids that are hearing it. So we have to do a better job of kind of not doing that as much, because there's some kid out there in Indiana, across the planet or anywhere, going right now, hey, man, I love that game. And instead, all they're hearing is, why would you want to be in San Francisco? Or, or Sabrina shouldn't be shooting with that. Or, all the different things that have happened over the last couple of days.
Look, I get that. Look, the Sabrina versus Curry event was the loudest that arena was. And I think that translated. But I'll just say this, like, it is not my job to try and paint lipstick on this pig. That's not the job. Like, you shouldn't have to blindly just go out there and be like, this is a great product. And I do think that there is.
We don't have to tear it down though either. Like, we don't have to tear it down either. Yeah,
we don't have to tear it down. But I think
that's what we've been doing. Not you. I'm not you saying you personally. Like, again, like, it's just been degrees of us saying it's not competitive, it's not great. It's never been that way. It's fun, and let the guys have fun. They're not going to ever be competitive. And paying them would be disastrous, because I think it's going to be one more arrow in the quiver of fans going, guess what? These overpaid divas are now having to get paid for the honor of being there, etc. Getting paid would be a mistake. I think it's a bad look. As pro player as I am, I just think it's a slippery slope and not a good one you want to cross there. I think it also helps, one thing, for the players to not be involved in as many events over the course of the weekend, because it is ridiculous.
Yes,
they're split in so many different ways. If they want to go party and do whatever, that's always been the case, and that will always be the case. But having to go to 85 different events over the course of 4 days, it ain't good for anybody.
And the media gets pinned for that. We're like, they have to do all this media. No. I'm telling you, they do 15 minutes of media availability on Saturday. They will have a couple of spots on NBA TV if they agree to it. And that's it. This is all corporate events. Don't be hanging us on NBA media because they're exhausted. They're tired from parties, and they're tired from sponsor events. And that's fine.
Thank you, Starry.
The Starry. Let's not get it twisted. That's enough on the All-Star game. We have actual basketball coming up on Thursday. We got 30 games to go before the NBA playoffs begin. David and I are going to get into the big questions that we have left to answer. We're not going to give you the answers, but we're going to talk about those questions and what we think is up next for the league over these last 30 games on the other side here on Locked On NBA. Let's talk about Prize Picks. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts, and you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. All you got to do is pick more or less than the stats over on Prize Picks, and that's it. And you can win up to 100 times your money. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We'll be right back in Locked On NBA. Make sure to check out the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the sports stories of today with local experts of Locked On and the national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Back here on Locked On NBA with David Ramil. Thanks for joining us on a Tuesday. All right, let's get into the biggest questions that we have remaining in the season, David, and I'll start us off with one. Who's going to win the West? This race is shaping up to be absolutely tremendous. You get home court advantage. You're going to face probably a pretty tough team coming out of the play-in tournament, so not a big reward there. But look, the Wolves are at 16 losses, the Thunder at 17 losses, the Clippers at 17 losses, and the Nuggets bringing up the rear now after their 3-game losing streak at 19 losses. There's division tiebreakers that are involved in here. This is going to matter for who gets home court. You don't want to go on the road to Denver, Colorado. It gets really tough in altitude. That's a factor here, I think. Minnesota in particular plays a lot better at home than they do on the road. The Clippers have been red hot. Can they keep that up? To me, the biggest question remaining this season is how are those top four standings going to shake out? Because that I think is going to determine a lot of what the playoff path looks like, not just for them, but for these teams that are looking to repeat what they did last year as play-in teams, for teams of the Lakers or Warriors or Pelicans trying to find that path. This is going to depend a lot on how that shakes out with who you have to go through in the Western Conference.
Yeah, all good points. I don't know if we want to debate back and forth about this because I'm sure we have lots of questions that we could get to, but I think it's really interesting to see how it all shakes out. There's going to be so much movement in there. It's a very tightly contested race there, and again, there's always going to be something that happens over the course of the next few weeks before the end of the regular season that's going to have one team climbing, another team sinking, and to me that's the big question. Then it's a spinoff there that I'm going to make here, because to me the thing is what has yet to happen injury is going to define the playoff race as we know it right now, because it's the NBA. Players unfortunately get hurt, and I wish we could avoid it altogether, but there's going to be another injury that's going to happen to a star level player, and it's going to impact something to some degree or another. And it's impossible to define, so I can't say which one it's going to happen to, but a player in the top or a player in an 8th seeded team is going to incur some kind of injury, and next thing you know, they're going to fall completely out of the playoff race, and it's going to completely change the layout of what we see happening as of right now. Like, we could make our predictions of what we think might happen. It's not going to matter because it's going to change at some point over the next 2.5 months. So to me, I just wonder if an injury is going to have that kind of an impact, and if so, where it might happen.
Unknown, as the phrase kind of goes, right? And you're absolutely right. One of the known unknowns, when's Joel Embiid going to be back? That's a huge question for me as we approach the last half of the season. Embiid's got about 2 weeks away from when he's supposed to be reevaluated. Now, that's not a return date. He's just going to be reevaluated. They could come out of that and be like, you know what? He's not recovering. It's probably going to be like, we're going to go ahead and shut him down. He's not going to return this season. We're going to go ahead and lock it up. They could come out and say, like, you know what? He's progressing way ahead of schedule. It's entirely possible that he can return to basketball activities in the next 3 weeks. That puts him in the middle of March. What if he comes back with like 3 weeks to spare in the regular season? This is massive, man. Okay, the Sixers are now kind of in limbo in between the play-in tournament and the playoffs right now. They're at 22 losses in the 5 spot. They're 3 up on the Pacers for 6 and Miami in the 7 spot. Miami, Indiana, and Orlando are all at 25 losses. So there's a possibility that the Sixers can fall into the play-in tournament. I mean, what if they fall into the play-in tournament and then Embiid comes back and now all of a sudden you've got a 2-7 matchup with the Cavaliers or the Knicks or the Bucks facing Joel Embiid in the Philadelphia 76ers? That's entirely possible. I'll tell you this, David, talking to people at All-Star Weekend, what I was told was by people that had conversations with the Sixers at the deadline, it was not about saving money. It was not about offering them pathways for next year. They were only interested in short-term major upgrades for this season. They are operating like a team that plans to get Joel Embiid back. That doesn't mean that he's absolutely coming back, but that means that that's been the decision that the Sixers decided to take at the deadline, and that's part of signing Kyle Lowry in the buyout market. They are not giving up on the season yet, and that's a big question, is when Joel Embiid returns.
Yeah, it has so many ramifications. The Sixers, I mean, their own season, again, is all, of course, largely defined by Embiid's impact, but think of all the other teams you pointed out. It's a really tight race there, and Embiid looms large over all of it, and his return does too. So I think that's an incredible concern. Kind of tying into that, and when you think of those younger teams, there is which one of them have what we've seen from these younger teams, Oklahoma City, Orlando, Indiana, etc. Is that the reality, and how does that project to not just the regular season but also the playoffs? Because I think that's if there's a question over these kinds of teams, it's how competitive can they continue to be despite what we've seen and what we've really liked, because some of these teams are really, really good. Oklahoma City in particular. Can they face the adversity of a playoff series and overcome that? Can they kind of continue if the playoff race intensifies for teams like Indiana and Orlando? Do they have what it takes to just say, we're in it? We're as good as Tyrese Halliburton is. Is he going to succumb to that kind of pressure? Is he going to falter with what's going on in Orlando? They're a really good team with clear limitations. Can they continue to play at a high level when there are must-win scenarios late in the season, et cetera? So these kinds of things are big questions for these younger teams that have been quote unquote surprising. There's the talent, obviously, but their record kind of reflects that they've been, well, at least for me, that there might be better than what we expected them to be. So how that kind of projects over the course of the regular season is a big question as well.
One of my big questions is going to be which of these Western Conference teams is going to find themselves. And what I mean by that is you got the Phoenix Suns who have, they've righted the ship after an early kind of struggle. They're in the 5 spot, 33-22. But there's still been a lot of questions about Phoenix. Like they've just been inconsistent and there's still a lot of questions about their defense. How about the Lakers at 30-26, starting to get some momentum, have seemed like they've turned a corner. Their record when Rui, Anthony Davis, and LeBron play is very good. All the questions about LeBron James and his future, those are going to continue, even though there's still reports that he would prefer to stay with the Lakers long-term. Said that on Sunday that he hopes to continue with the Lakers, but we'll see if that's actually how it shakes out. And then you got the Warriors, who all of a sudden they're 8-2 in their last 10. Since Draymond came back, they've been absolutely going nuts. Kuminga has given them a new dimension. They're a different team now, and they're bringing Klay Thompson off the bench. One of these teams, I think, is probably going to assert themselves as a serious threat in the Western Conference. Can all three of them do it? That's unlikely. So that's going to be a question for me is you can't all be serious contenders along with the Lakers or with the Nuggets and the Clippers. Maybe one of the Wolves and the Thunder too, like you mentioned. Which of these teams is going to get it together and really be a threat in the West?
I've got one last question that I think is something I'm curious about and only magnified as a result of All-Star Weekend. What version of the Bucks are we going to see? Last week we were talking about have they flipped the switch, etc. Man, that you hear Doc Rivers talking about his position and his team, and that's Jacque Vaughn never sounded like that, and he just got canned. That's the whole thing. It's unbelievable. He talks like a man who's already seeing the ship sinking, and he's going, well, we got no choice. We're going to all die as a result. So it's like, okay, that's great. I just don't know what to expect with this Bucks team. Dame Lillard, is he going to continue to have his ups and downs? Bucks fans seem to be kind of perpetually teetering in terms of what version of this team they're going to see from one day to the next. So it's just going to be interesting because they are clearly a good and talented team, and you would think that things would have been a lot easier over the course of the season, but it's been kind of difficult and disastrous. Maybe not disastrous, but it's been really, really challenging in terms of Adrian Griffin and trying to find their identity, trying to incorporate an older Dame who's have his clear limitations, and then now incorporating a new coach, etc. Redefining yourself mid-season usually doesn't end well, but with a team with championship history the way the Bucks have, maybe they might be the group to figure it out. Who knows?
Dame shoots miserably all year, then wins the 3-point contest.
Who could have foreseen that?
Thanks for killing my Tyrese Halliburton plus 450, Dame. All right, on the other side, we'll talk about some of the news from today. Mike Conley gets a new deal while Jacque Vaughn ends abruptly. We'll talk about that plus more news on the other side here on Locked On NBA. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is obviously an app we've talked about it so often before, and I'm telling you about the value of therapy. Sometimes we all need an opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small, certain things that can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. Winter's really hard for me. I struggle a lot with seasonal affect disorder here in Colorado, so I have a really hard time. And I do a number of things to try and combat that, but therapy's got to be one of them. You have to be able to work through some of those problems and kind of talk through them. And it's important to be able to work through those problems and just kind of reset your mind. I think it's so important to take strategies. That's one of the nice things about therapy. It'll also give you strategies to live a little bit better. So I was traveling this weekend, a lot of stress. I use certain strategies to try and help myself stay centered and be in the right mind frame to do all the things I need to do in my life. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. Though, if you are a Niners fan, also, therapy might be helpful. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us and making us part of your day on a Tuesday. Matt Moore and David Ramil with you. So some news today. The Brooklyn Nets decided to go in a different direction. They fired Jacque Vaughn after giving an extension just last year. Kevin Ollie, assistant coach, is expected to move into that role. He's been rumored for a number of head coaching jobs along the way. David, I'll just be really honest here. Nets fans, look, I do tend to trust local fans, and Nets fans in general were pretty against Vaughn and did not think the team was responding. I like the way that they played. The strategy that they had was pretty good. Everyone's like, they got killed by 50 by the Celtics. Who cares? Like, it's one regular season game and they're outgunned and the Celtics are the best team in the league. This stuff happens. But like, their strategy was, we're going to shoot a bunch of threes. We're going to space the floor because we have a million wings, and we're going to offensive rebound, and we're going to have a lot of defensive versatility. And they were pretty good at that. Like, Vaughn was hired to coach Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and he wound up coaching Mikal Bridges and like Cam Thomas and kind of Spencer Dinwiddie. I get that I don't even know how you could say they've underperformed. The problem here is that this team is entirely made up of guys that know they're not going to be there. This is a transitionary period. Clearly, you didn't put this team together with the mindset of like, this is the squad we want. You threw it together because you had to trade Kyrie and KD. So I think blaming the coaches is kind of misguided, given that they were not nearly a disaster like, I don't know, the Charlotte Hornets were, or some of these, even the Atlanta Hawks, who I think Quinn Snyder's a great coach, but that team's underperformed way more than the Nets have. So I don't really think this is a good move by them. I don't think it's a disaster because I think that they'll just head in a different direction. But I thought it was a strange decision to let go of Jacque Vaughn, given all the circumstances this season.
I agree. I'm going to miss him. I loved hearing him talk during pressers. And I can also see why local fans and media might think, you know what, that kind of approach might be a little over the top, a little grating. I don't know. Whatever issues they might have, I don't think those are the main issues with the Brooklyn Nets. I think it's the fact that they have tried to redefine themselves 3 times in as many years, and it hasn't worked. And at some point, you've got to pick an identity and you've got to stick with it and lean all into it to be your very best, because you're trying to wear so many different hats at so many different times. It's not going to work, and it hasn't worked. And you've gone from this really good, spunky team led by Kenny Atkinson to this blown up, bloated team with guys that didn't want to be there either, and James Harden and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and Steve Nash is probably an ill-fitting coach there, and then you had to fire him and you had to trade guys away, etc. You've gone through all these different variations, and there was some positivity to start the season, but to your point, they all kind of feel like they're temporary. It's just so difficult to try and lean into anything comfortable and to be like, you know, I'm here for the work. I'm here to do what this team is expected to do and contribute and win, etc. When you're all kind of like, well, am I here for the long term? What's the next step here? Am I just going to be a trade piece, etc.? I don't know, man. I just feel like this team is that kind of falls not on the coach. I think that falls mostly on the rest of the front office. And you know, maybe that's kind of, I like Sean Marks. At the same time, I think the decision making to keep fluctuating between identity and identity is a really poor choice for building a team.
I just wonder how much of this is ownership. The same ownership that pushed for Kyrie Irving, the same ownership that wanted James Harden, the same ownership that seems pretty intent on.
You can't fire them.
Trying to build these super teams. I just, you know, this has been a problem with the Nets franchise going back to Prokhorov, even before the current regime. You need to build something sustainable from the ground up, and I think Sean Marks is a great guy to do that. But you got to let him do his job, and he did it, and then he blew it up because Kyrie and KD decided they wanted to sign there, and you were like, cool. Maybe next time you gotta have the right superstars. That's a lot of it. Elsewhere, Mike Conley got a new 2-year extension with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I will go ahead and give a little bit of insight on this. So my understanding, what I'd heard in league circles, quote unquote, was that this was a little bit of a sell job by Tim Conley. Tim Conley really wanted to keep Conley because he understands what he's brought to the table in terms of veteran leadership and helping these guys be stable and more settled down. This is a group that's pretty volatile. Like, Ant's an emotional guy and he gets frustrated, and Rudy's an emotional guy and he gets frustrated. And I think Towns really gets down on himself when things go badly. You need this steadying force. So they obviously, you know, they made a move to add a backup point guard, which I think is smart for them for the long term. But this is a really good move, I think, for them to stabilize things. Conley's probably not starting by the end of this deal. I have to look up the details on the guarantees for it, but just to not have to worry about losing Conley in the offseason, to be able to say, hey, we're going to have this group together for a little bit, even, you know, if they decide to keep it together, don't have it be a situation where you are outside of that control. Conley wants to be there. It's a good fit. It works. I think this is a smart move by both parties.
When I heard the decision, I thought of it in terms of having impact in 3 different timelines, both in the short term, the midterm, and the long term. In the short term, it's obviously, as you pointed out, a really great decision because it gives them some stability. You kind of lean all into it. It's like, you know what, we've got our guy here. He's going to be here for another couple of years as the vet, as the stabilizing factor, the OG, whatever you want to call him. Now, all of a sudden, you can go into what might seem like a shaky playoff race and be like, you know what? We're committed. We're all aboard here. We're focused on one primary goal to win, and we can go deeper than a lot of teams might expect us to be because we have that kind of sense of, you know what, we're going to stick together. There's something to that idea of this isn't going to be just broken up. We just talked about it in context of the Nets, excuse me. And now with the Wolves, all of a sudden there's a sense that, you know what, we're not going to get traded. We're going to be building this together. It's not just this year; it's beyond that. So let's continue to win together. Why not now? Why not us? But in the midterm, obviously, I think it's going to have impact in a couple seasons from now when all of a sudden, you know, you're going to have this luxury tax issue. You're going to be in a second apron. It's going to be hindering a team that's going to, you know, need to rebuild and retool, maybe not rebuild, but kind of just tool around the edges. And it might cost you the acquisition of a key player down the road, or it might even cost you one of the players currently on the roster. You might have to trade it, Karl Anthony Towns. And it's not like his name hasn't been in talks before. And in the long term, then kind of committing that short-term stability to Conley, as good a decision as it might be on the Fields department, it might cost you a star level player right now, and might cost you somewhere else down the road as well. And they could kind of, again, you redefine who you are. You're going to have to change your roster. And again, I think just see lots of impacts over the next few years there. But in the short term, I kind of like it. I think you kind of wait. That's tomorrow's problem. I don't have to worry about it. 2026's problem is something I don't have to think about right now. 2024, when we want to win, when we think we have all the talent to win big, let's sign our guy.
And with a 2-year deal, it's not prohibitive, right? It's not a deal where it's locking you up for the long term. You're not like tied into this. They are going to be over the second apron next season if they don't make a cut. So that's something to kind of watch here, because the second apron isn't just about the luxury tax money. It's also about what that means for your flexibility in terms of being able to add to the roster. It's going to be a fascinating spring and summer for this Wolves team, because you get an opportunity to kind of provide proof of concept here, right? You make a playoff run and it's like, okay, we need to keep this together. This team can win.
Right.
You flame out. And now all of a sudden it's maybe we need more flexibility, just from the perspective of we're not there yet, and we got to keep our options open in the long term. All right, that's got to do it for Locked On NBA for Tuesday. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate you guys joining us. If you want to hear more of David, make sure to check out Locked On Heat as the Heat continue their zombie-like trudge towards inevitably going further in the playoffs than any
regular season. Doesn't matter.
Meanwhile, if you want to hear more of me, you can check me out on Locked On Nuggets, where you can hear me trying to assuage Nuggets fans who are absolutely panicking because they've lost a whole 3 games in a row. You can also check me out on Buckets, my betting podcast over at the Action Network. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for John Corrales and Jake Madison. Those guys will have some great thoughts, I'm sure, on the All-Star weekend and what's up next for the league. Keep it here all throughout the week. Thanks for joining us on Locked On NBA.